Hello, welcome to WFUZ-TV. I'm Blair Castro, and I'm in the studio with Thomas Jenkins. And today we have a very special guest joining us from Washington, D.C. It's our own Congressman, Mr. Barry Moore, who's running for U.S. Senate. Mr. Barry Moore, thank you so much for joining us today.
Blair, Thomas, it's great to be on with you. Thank y'all for having us on.
Yes, sir.
So your Senate race is definitely heating up, and I guess I'm going to ask the big question right off the bat, which is you have the coveted Trump endorsement. That's been something everyone's kind of talking about this election cycle. I've seen personally a few people, bring mailers and flyers with them Photoshop next to Trump saying they have Trump support or that they're Trump's pick, or heavily implying that, I guess I would say, but you actually have it. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got that and what the process was like finding out that you received that endorsement?
Yeah, so, I was the first in the nation to endorse him August 21st, 2015 in Lab People's Stadium when he came to Mobile for his original stadium event. So I've been with the president for 11 years. His team asked me to run for Congress. We were able to do that and win. And then we were hoping to get this endorsement for the Senate race. I'd had a lot of my conservative friends call and say, man, you need to run for the Senate. That wasn't really something I was wanting to do, but a lot of conservatives and allies of the president here on the Hill, like, he can trust you, you need to do this. And so January 16th, I qualified in Birmingham. We got some University of Alabama interns that were there for qualifying, so we decided to take them to Dave and Buster's. And so we stayed out way past my bedtime. And from there, I had to drive to Huntsville because I was speaking at 7 the next morning. So after we left Dave and Buster's, drove to Huntsville, gave a 7 a.m. speech, back to Shelby County around noon to give a speech. And I got home that night, and I had my phone on silent because I'd been speaking all day and I was tired. And I told Heather, I said, that's my wife, and said, hey, babe, I'm going to bed. I am worn out. And so my phone was on silent, and the president tried to call me 3 times, and I did not take his call. And so it's like a mugshot when he called. It's his mugshot, literally. So I've missed 3 calls. I'm dead asleep. And Heather comes running through the house and jumps on the bed, hits me on the chest. I thought I was being murdered in my sleep. She said, answer your phone. The president's calling. I'm like, I wake up out of a dead sleep. I'm like, how do you know the president's calling? She said, just answer your phone. And so I slid over and on the phone, and Natalie Harp's like, Barry, this is Natalie Harp. The president would like to speak with you. And so he gets on the phone. He goes, Barry, because he's from New York, so he talks kind of funny. He goes, hey, he says, I'm going to endorse you. You're going to go up 30 points in the polls. He said, I'm 406-0. He said, don't mess this up. And I said, no, sir, we will not mess this up. And he said, I know you were with me early on when I first started. You were one of the first guys. And he said, and I never have to call you in the middle of the night because we only got 2-vote majority here in D.C. So very often, even people within our own party will hold out for a pet project in the district to get the legislation on the America First stuff move forward. And so anyway, he knew that I've been helping him with his agenda, trying to get some things done. So getting his endorsement January 17th was really big. And J.D. Vance came shortly after that, and Turning Point USA, in March, obviously earlier this month. And so we've been really fortunate, but the coveted Trump endorsement is really huge. I mean, it moves the needle in Republican politics. And I think most of Alabama, if you look at it, he polls at 85%. So they really like the job he's doing. And look, Alabama loves him, but he loves Alabama.
Definitely.
What draws Trump's attention to Alabama so much currently? What is the sudden interest?
I think because he does well when he runs here. He doesn't have to spend a lot of time. But not only that, I think there's something about he relates to us in some kind of strange way. We love this country. We love the border being secure. We love our Second Amendment rights. And we love really the American people and the people of Alabama putting their priorities over the swamp. And so in some way, he just has always had a tie to Alabama. He appreciates us. And I think, too, to the delegation's credit, I think that a lot of us are friends with him. And I think that he appreciates that we communicate with him on needs we have for the state, and we help him move his agenda as well. So it's a win-win for our state.
So speaking of the swamp, I see you positioned as an anti-establishment type candidate, just like Trump is. How do you kind of buck the system and fight the system while also working within it and being effective? How do you kind of, coincide those two things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And for me, when I first came here, I joined the House Freedom Caucus, and that's invitation only. You just can't come join. But they knew I was conservative, and they knew I would be voting fairly conservative. And so in the first congressional district, I serve that district now. It's the 6th most conservative district in the nation, and I have the highest liberty score from the delegation. But I've also found that you can be principled and practical. There's not going to be 435 perfect. There is 435 perfect versions of everything we pass out of DC. The thing is, you have to be able to stand on your principles if you're pro-life, Second Amendment, whatever that looks like. But at the same time, you can be practical. And so for me, it's been a process. I mean, I've literally got Joe Biden signed one of my bills into law for veterans. And I had a ton of Democratic support on that. And I don't know if Joe signed it or the auto pen signed it, but it's law now. And so, and even now I've got a bill for, like, if we catch an illegal here drinking and driving, they're automatically removed from the country. And that's sitting in the Senate. I had 35 Democrats vote with me on the floor of the House for that and move it over to the Senate. So there are things sometimes that I think even when they seem a little crazy, occasionally they will do some things that I think make sense for veterans and even for our communities that are where we've got these people here illegally drinking and driving. They're repeat offenders. The judge would convict them, give them to Biden's ICE agents, and they'd go down the road and turn them loose, and they'd be right back on the street again. And so there are some things that's hard for everybody against, but I think for me, it's always been about not being a lightning rod, voting your convictions, but not going out and grandstanding. Don't criticize your leadership. So we have been, and one other thing too I need to mention is our staff. I think because we've done so much good work on the ground. We were #1 workplace environment in the nation for all Republican offices in Washington, D.C. They gave 8 awards, and we got 2 of those awards. The second place we came in for accessibility. So allowing people that have issues with the VA or the IRS or veterans issues, we're over 8,000 cases in just under 5 years, or a little over 5 years now. So I think it's taking care of your people, passing common sense legislation, and then not grandstanding if you oppose leadership. Don't go out and throw them under the bus. You can speak pretty candid. And look, guys, HFC meetings, House Freedom Caucus, that's the only meeting I go here that I don't feel like I need a shower when I leave. But they can be very heated. I mean, those can be very intense discussions. But when we leave there, we're on a united front. And I think often our party, we create a circular firing squad sometimes, and we shoot our own when we can really talk about the good things we're doing, fuss about the differences behind closed doors, and then try to come out with something that is certainly practical. It may not be perfect.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask a little bit about your background from before you got into politics. I know you were in waste management. I remember a really awesome commercial that you had that other people may have copied, may not, but it's very similar nowadays. I love that commercial. It really stood out. That's where I first kind of saw who you were. Can you talk a little bit about how that past experience is sort of led you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I started a garbage company. I graduated from Auburn Ag Science, worked a couple of years with a Fortune 500 company, then moved back to my hometown, which is Enterprise, and started a garbage company. I still have my CDLs. I am likely to be the only guy in the U.S. Senate with a commercial driver's license. And so, but I ran heavy equipment, and we were a general contractor. And so I grew up on a farm, so I've always been able to work equipment, but at the same time, I was able to get through school and get back and start this company from scratch. And so I tell everybody the transition from garbage to politics is pretty easy to make. You just have to sort through all the nasty stuff and try to get the good stuff and recycle it and make legislation that makes sense. And so, Heather and I started that company 25 years ago this year, and it grew and has been successful. But the one thing I learned is that we have so many people in DC and even in Montgomery that they come out of college and maybe they go into politics, or maybe they go straight into some government payroll, and they never really understand what it's like to sign the front of those checks. And so Reagan said it best. He said the government's idea on the economy is when it's moving, they tax it. If it keeps moving, they regulate it. When it fails, they subsidize it. And I've always thought if we could get those taxes and regulations, because I was dealing with it on a daily basis, if we could decrease that, the private sector, capitalism, the investments of money within the communities would create high-paying jobs and grow the economy, and we wouldn't need the subsidies. And so for me, it was just starting a company from scratch. There was a need in the marketplace, and I really missed that. I mean, being in business is my passion, but I felt called to do this. And I think that we need people who understand, like President Trump, who's a business guy, who I come from the private sector, that government can be, instead of coming alongside, very often it rides on people's backs.
Mm-hmm. So I appreciate what you said about your office winning the award for accessibility. I moved here from Pensacola. I moved 45 minutes down the road from Pensacola to Gulf Shores from the Perdido side. And I actually, was very involved over there, worked in the 1st Congressional District of Florida. And the difference, I guess, from when I moved here in terms of your office responding to phone calls and stuff. Like the first time I ever called, I actually spoke to a real person. I didn't get routed to a voicemail. I was able to communicate with you guys, and I had better access there than I did at the county and the city level from where I live. So that was really telling to me. So I'm glad that you prioritize that. How in the future, when you go up to the Senate, will you maintain that kind of level of accessibility or, comparable, especially with, serving so many more constituents?
Yeah, I think the key to serving the public is being public servants. And so as I staff my people and as I bring them on board, I'm looking for people who serve its hearts. I'm looking for people who care about people, and so much of our work, like a couple of my rock stars in the state, were married to veterans. I mean, I got a Gold Star wife that works for me. I got a wife that her husband retired military, and then I've got some people that have other various backgrounds that they have a personal tie to who they're serving, and I think that if they can relate to that, it makes you more willing to step out and work. And for me, it's always been about Heather and I just pretty well down to earth. And so it's like, yeah, we've got a job, but so often people come to DC and in some weird kind of way, they think they're your rulers instead of your servants. And I think you have to keep a different mindset. Like I work for you guys. I work for the public. Y'all pay my salary. Y'all pay my staff. And doggone it, you ought to just love people, And so for us, it's like we care about the people when I literally was in Annie's little steakhouse, a little cafe and Enterprise on Main Street a year and a half ago. And I'm sitting there eating. And this old guy walks up to me and he goes, "Hey, Barry." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I've been waiting on my hearing aids since the war." And I was like, "What war?" And he's like, "The Vietnam War." He said, "I called your office and in 2 weeks I had those hearing aids at my doorsteps." And so, and I get those stories all the time, and it's people I don't personally, I may recognize them, but it's that staff, man. They just take care of our people. And so, again, if you can keep that mindset that you do love those people and you care about them, and they're not a tax ID number, they're in fact a citizen who has served this nation, or they're in business, or they're struggling to get a passport, whatever that looks like. We want to make sure that we serve. And I think the key to that at the Senate is you're going to have more staff, but you pick the right people. And they can make a really, really good office. And they make me look a lot better than I really am most days. Honestly, they do a good job.
They absolutely do. Shout out to them. I had a question about, just ask, what do you think distinguishes you from your opponent or opponents in this race? Why should people vote for you over them?
Well, I think most of the time in a Republican primary, everybody's going to say they're the Trump conservative. I mean, everybody's going to say that. Like you said, they'll Photoshop themselves in photos with Trump, or they'll say I'm a conservative, especially in a Republican primary. But for me, I've got a record. Nobody else in this race has a legislative record. I served 2 terms in the state legislature, walked away from that job. The president's team asked me to run for Congress. I'm literally walking away from that job to help in the Senate. But, I think I have a record. And I think if you look at our Liberty scores in the delegation, Coach is a 95, but he's in second place. I'm a 96. I beat him by 1 point. And so he and I came to DC at the same time. So I am a known commodity. I am a conservative. I am a member of the House Freedom Caucus, but I'm also a Trump guy in a sense that I was with him, the very first elected official nation to endorse him, and he's in fact endorsed me. So I think I have a record. I mean, it's easy to run and say what you're going to do. And so often we as conservatives get so frustrated with rhinos within our own party because they run as conservatives and then they get to the system and the system gets its hooks in them and the lobbyist gets its hooks in them and they get pulled in so many directions. And it's not, you just really got to know that who you are. You got to be based in that sense. And so for me, I think the fact that everybody's running as a Trump conservative, but I have a record that is conservative, and it's going to be hard to find anybody nationally that's more conservative than me. But it's also a guy that can call the president. Now, he takes my calls. I don't always take his, but he takes my calls so I can get things done. Because if you think about this November 26th election, we only got 24 months with him as president of the United States. And so we need somebody who has served in the House, who has staff in place, who can go to work day one and get things done. And so I think it just sets me apart. I've got a record. I have relationships on the Hill that matter. And we can go to work really, really fast and move straight to work for the American people and the people of Alabama.
I think something else that kind of sets you apart from my perspective as a voter is that you have kind of been through the ringer a little bit. You've, had been under a lot of scrutiny, had accusations made against you, and you've come out of all of that. And I think that kind of makes you relatable in some ways, because some people seem to be just handed their place in government or in power. And I've seen you kind of battle what it's like to really like struggle to come out of some of that and overcome some hardships. How do you think that's kind of helped you?
I think probably the greatest thing is my faith. I mean, I think through 2014, look, I was labeled the most dependable conservative vote in Alabama legislature, and I was a General Flynn before there was one. As the first Republican majority went into Montgomery in 2010, I was part of that class, and I was the most conservative member of that class. And so they came after me and put me, I mean, they tried to put me in prison for 40 years. I was General Flynn before there was a General Flynn. But we went through that process, and the Lord told me, he said, I'm going to break you to make you, to shape you. And he took me through the fire in 14, but it humbled me to the point that I said, okay, Lord, whatever you call me to do, I'm going to do. And so we went through that 2014, got the not guilty verdict. And when General Flynn was going through that, I knew exactly what he was up against. We saw the weaponization of the DOJ against Trump, and everybody around Trump, friends of mine, were sucked into the Georgia investigations and indicted. And so, as I said on Judiciary Committee, I was able to bring an element of experience to that process, knowing that what I had been through, I had seen the playbook before. And so when I was questioning Christopher Wray or Merrick Garland or Durham on the Durham reports, I had information because I had lived that process and I saw what they were doing, and they will punish you if you do not play the games of the system. And that's okay. Those of us who weather those storms, there's nothing that scares us. We've been there. We've faced the challenges. And so it just humbled me. I think in many ways that it taught me that there is a God and I'm not him, and I'm going to do what he calls me to do. And so 2014 was a life changing. My kids will tell you it's the worst 2 year and a half or 10 months of their life. But through that process, I think our family's faith grew. But certainly I was able to lock in on due north and what I was supposed to do.
I have a kind of a random question. What do you think about people accepting campaign donations in crypto form?
I don't have a problem with it. Like, and crypto is the blockchain is a secure transaction. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Eric Trump mentioned this at Turning Point USA in Auburn, that after the 2020 election, the big banks who were beholden to the Biden DOJ and all the SEC stuff, they debanked all the Trump family. And they had to move all their accounts to crypto. And that is it's an opportunity to be an anonymous transaction, and it gives you ability to fight off the big banks who are tied to big government and all of that. So what they did to Trump. So if they want to donate in crypto, I'm fine with that now. And we don't want a CBDC, central bank digital currency. I am not for that, because that impacts your liberty. That impacts your freedom, because we don't want the government controlling that transaction. So as crypto is obviously a thing that's coming, it's coming of age. It's going to be like AI. We're dealing with those issues. We have to make sure that your liberty is protected and you can do transactions, and the government can't, Citibank or whoever the banks are, they can't debank you because you're not playing the games that they are doing. You don't have a score like the Chinese government does, where you have this economic or environmental score and they can debank you. But they debank Trump. Many people don't know that. And so they moved their money to crypto so they could survive. And that was the only way they could do transactions, pay their employees, that sort of stuff. So those are the sort of things that, I don't mind people using crypto. I don't mind them using cash. I don't mind them using credit cards. But at the end of the day, we've got to protect liberty in the process and make sure that you can do transactions without the government controlling that.
So going back to protecting liberties in some way, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you had spoken about starting to kind of get rid of the Department of Education. That's something that I think Trump had talked about as well. Where are we on that? What's kind of the current status? And is that something in the future we still might be able to see?
Yeah, I don't know the status. I know Linda McMahon she's on board to help us do that. And I think, look, I remember when I was in the state legislature, often, even at the time, the governor was like, I've got to do this program to get federal funds. I mean, in other words, they were telling us what we're going to teach in our schools to get the money that your taxpayer money went to DC, got into the Department of Education, and they control what you taught by funding or holding the funding. And so I think we need to do away with the Department of Education and leave that money to the states and local communities. You decide the curriculum. My kids are all public school. I was public school. But we want to make sure that we have parents have a say in that process. And I'm a big fan of school choice, too. I mean, and I think the money ought to follow the students. I don't think it ought to be locked into losing school districts. I think these kids ought to be able to take their money. It's their parents' money. It's not the government's money. You pay the taxes to educate your children. If you want to send that money, you want to send that child to a better school, then you ought to have tax credits, or you ought to have some sort whatever they want to give you to say a voucher to say, hey, I want to educate my kids. They need a better education. And it's surprising me often the Democrats fight that, but it's because the teachers union has such a strong hold on the Democratic Party that often they're afraid to step out and really use parents' choice. So yeah, the Department of Education is they tons of money, thousands of employees, and they don't educate a single student. They just tie strings to the local school districts that want to educate our kids in Alabama. So I think it's still a thing. I think we're working in that direction. I haven't heard any updates lately, but I'm excited about where the president is on it, and I'm certainly supportive.
What would you say currently is the most vital piece of legislation that you're working on for the state of Alabama?
Probably, and it's a big picture thing, but everybody's talking about the SAVE Act. Mm-hmm. But we have pretty darn secure elections in Alabama. The problem is in California and New York, they will cheat and they will let people who are not U.S. citizens vote. And so it impacts you as a voter in Alabama because they cancel out your votes. I mean, especially if you got people who are not U.S. citizens. So it's not a local legislation issue, but is a national legislation that impacts the entire country. And we need to secure the U.S. elections. So SAVE Act is a huge issue right now. And I will say this, guys, to our credit, we've only got a 2-vote majority in Washington, D.C. right now in the House of Representatives. And the big, beautiful bill was one of the largest tax cuts in the history of this nation. We did some great things for farmers. We did some great things for rural hospitals. But we are we're trying to finish up DHS today. If we can get those 12 approach bills, we've got 11 done. We're struggling with DHS because of Somali fraud, and the Democrats don't want us to hold those people accountable. But we'll be the first time in 30 years, in 3 decades, we've done all 12 approach bills through the normal regular order out of committee on the floor of the House and out of the Senate for the first time in 30 years with a 2-vote majority. And that will do away with these continuing resolutions, these omnibuses at Christmas to fund the government, or it's going to shut down. It allows our people to get paid. So I think things like that we're working on will impact nationally, but certainly impact the state. And even our contractors within the state, they need farmers. They need consistency from the government to know how to plan ahead, not this CRs for 3 months or 90 days or 40 days. Then we're going to kick the can again and try to figure out how to fix it. So we're literally going through a process that I think if we can figure the finish normal approach process, get the SAVE Act in place, I think we're going to be in a good spot as far as the nation. We're moving in the right direction. It's a long way from where we need to be, guys, but we're in a good spot.
I'd like to definitely touch on the farm and agriculture issue for the state. Is there anything being done to protect farmland, agricultural lands and all that, and also to incentivize farming?
Yeah, so a couple of things. We have passed the Farm Bill. I'm on Ag Committee. I'm the only Alabama Republican on Ag Committee, but we passed the Farm Bill out a few weeks ago. In the big, beautiful bill, we brought up reference prices and kind of created a more solid insurance program for farmers. And one thing that's in the big, beautiful bill, a lot of people don't realize, is we raise an inheritance tax threshold of $15 million because you guys know, I mean, farmers will have a lot of equipment and they'll have a lot of land and they'll have barns and they'll have stuff. And so that stuff is an asset, but they're always kind of cash poor. So they're asset rich and they're cash poor. And we raised that inheritance to $15 million because what would happen very often is the patriarch of the family will pass away. And then the IRS will roll in and go, well, we got this death tax and this tractor's worth this, and this barn's worth this, and this combine's worth this, and this planter's worth this, and this land's worth this. And then they had this family a huge tax bill. Well, what happens? They can't pay the tax bill because there's no cash. And so instantly that farm gets busted up and sold off. And so if we want next generation farmers, if we want people to be able to stay in farming, we've got to keep the government from coming in and destroying those family farms. So in the big, beautiful bill, that's part of that process. In the Farm Bill, we're working through to get the reference prices, insurance programs in place. We did some of that in the big, beautiful bill. We just got this Farm Bill off of out of the House committee. Hopefully we'll get it across the finish line. We had it 2 years ago, and the Democrat senators that control the majority in the Senate wouldn't move it.
What do you think about some of the proposed solar farms and data centers that are going up, especially in our district? I know it's a hot button issue. How can we kind of fight back or protect our land? I know, you can't tell people what to do with their private property, but, what are some things that we can, I guess, kind of help with that issue?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things we can do is Arkansas negotiated a great deal with Google because Google actually brought modular reactors in to create energy on site for their AI generation location out there. And they're actually selling power back to the grid. So it's kind of neat because instead of the demand's going up on the grid and people's prices going up, the Google AI facilities actually producing more energy than it's going to use. So it goes back to the grid. So the supply and demand curve on kilowatts, the demand remains the same, or actually it's going to be lower on the grid because they're selling it back. And so that'll help lower prices. Now there's some cool things on cooling water for the cooling. And we actually got some cities that are negotiating deals, so they'll send their gray water, because cities are always trying to filter sewage and try to make it work and put it back out as fresh water. Some of these AI companies have agreed to take sewage water, filter it, use it for cooling, and it'll come back cleaner than it is than the local municipalities can produce it at their water plants. And so there's a lot of interesting takes on this and how we're going to approach it. But the fact that we're looking at making them generate their own power and then clean water for us, I think that could be a win. And we want to lead on AI. We don't want China ahead of us on that, because that is a huge technology for the future. It's going to increase the efficiencies of workforces. It's also going to make us competitive into the future.
So I know we don't have too much time left, but I wanted to ask real quick, what is one issue that voters you think probably overlook and that you wish they kind of would pay more attention to, that you'd want people to know about in the Senate race in particular?
We have to pay attention to Sharia law. We have to pay attention to what Islam has done in Europe. If you look at London and Paris, those open border policies, much like what we had under the 4 years of Biden, that's something that nobody's really tracking much. I mean, we talk about it. We started a Sharia-free caucus. I spoke on the floor this morning about it, but we cannot have a law that competes with the Constitution of the United States. And so Sharia law is non-compatible with our Constitution and our liberty. And so that's something that people need to pay attention about. We need to pray about this thing, because it's a very difficult issue. But I have been told that in London and Paris, it's hard to get 30-year money now because they don't think those cities are going to survive. And so if we don't get a handle on that now, it's already in Mamdani is obviously Muslim in New York. We have it in Dearborn, Michigan. We have sales outside of Dallas, Texas. And there is no liberty within that process. And so it is not compatible with the U.S. Constitution. So that's something we got to be watching.
In terms of the campaign trail, since you've announced for Senate, what's been your favorite thing so far? What do you like the most about running for Senate? Because I know it's not easy, but I'm sure there's some good parts of it as well.
The best part, and this is really neat, I mean, as you travel the state of Alabama, you really meet a lot of good people. I mean, there are good people all over the state, and you get to, I mean, there's some cool little restaurants you find out about. Obviously, you may not, you do an event here and there, but just the people, and there's so much that Alabama has to offer. And you learn a lot about that through traveling and meeting people. And so for me, it's been meeting people in North Alabama, Northeast, Northwest, Southwest, Southeast, whatever that looks like, Central Alabama, that they're really good people and they love this country. And so, and you don't get that from the liberal media. I mean, they're always reporting the bad stuff, but there are a lot of good people. And so for me, that's been one of the blessings in this process, is as though there are 5 million people and there's a lot of people to meet. There are a lot of good people in that 5 million people.
Anything else?
I don't.
Okay. If there's anything you want the voters to know, feel free to advocate. Tell them where to find you online. Tell them how they can donate and contribute.
Thank you, Blair. Yeah, I think probably barrymoreforalabama.com. If they want to hear our little backstories, if they want to know a little bit about who we are, our family, even in our team, if they want to get involved, that's a good place to go. It kind of gives you the story of our background, our announcement, and all that. So I'd encourage people to check us out.
Absolutely. And, if you're ever in Gulf Shores, feel free to come to our studio. We'll have you on anytime. We appreciate it so much. It does show how accessible you are. I appreciate the responsiveness from your office and from you, and seeing you show up at different events. It's been a pleasure to watch you kind of grow in this role in this short amount of time, it feels like. So, we wish you the best and hope that you pull out a win here.
Well, thank you, guys. Things are going well. God bless you, and thank you for your time. Sorry I was a little slow getting on.
No worries. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.